Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. We're live at Ellucian Live 2025 in sunny Orlando, Florida. I am Dr. Chris Maloney, not Dr. Joe Salustio. I am a principal strategic specialist with Ellucian, and I am delighted to be sharing the couch to my immediate right with Ed Up Experience co-host and co-founder Elvin Fredis.
Hello.
And sitting diagonally across from me, really fun and nice guy, Brian Baden, Associate CIO and Chief Technology Officer at Angelo State University in the great state of Texas. Welcome to the podcast, Brian. Good to have you.
Glad to be here.
All right, Brian. Well, why don't we just start from the top and let all the people out there who are going to listen to this know who is Brian Baden?
Oh, boy. There's many layers of that.
Let's get deep.
We'll start with a little bit of background. I have been at Angelo State for the past 25 years, so definitely have never been bored working in technology at ASU. It's been an interesting ride. I know we were talking a little bit about it earlier, but it's my first project that came in when I was in 2000, which doesn't seem that long ago to me.
No, it does not.
Was that we really needed a modem bank so that people could get access to the campus resources and the internet.
That's modems, folks. He said
modems. And for some of you that weren't even born then, you probably don't even know what a modem is. But right. It was, I remember everybody being excited about it. And I think, the shelf life of that thing, it didn't last very long. It was 4 or 5 years, and it was basically, it was gone. But it's been... when you look at things that have happened since then, and it's amazing how much has changed.
Oh, I'm sure you've had a front row seat, right? 25 years at the same institution, you've seen the pace and the acceleration of transformation, technology, modernization, et cetera.
Yes, and that I think we, in the early days, you kind of hoped it was maybe it would slow down. I think it's only speeding up as we've gone along. And I know from an IT standpoint, we've evolved. When I first started, we didn't have the specializations, and a lot of times I'll use an analogy that says that we were much like the country doctor, and they let us do anything back then, that brain surgery and everything else, which is kind of scary. But over time, you get these specializations where somebody that, my background was network, so you became just these network guys that really understood that piece. And then eventually you got into a lot of different specializations to be able to address it. And the thing that's, to me, that's changed a lot is really understanding that the technology is just a small piece of this. It's really a lot more about relationships and the people and the process to get everybody moving. A lot of organizational change type.
Well, let's dive into that, because that's a hugely important topic. That's one that a lot of folks are dealing with right now and or anticipating dealing with very soon. So let's go there.
Well, I think that's there's a lot of different ways to approach it, but you've got to spend, in my opinion, you've got to spend time not doing the transaction, whatever you think that is. Hey, let's change systems or whatever it may be. To me, it's much more about getting people to see, what do I get out of this over time, and how do they need some time to process that. And I think a lot of times what you'll see is that, so I can do this myself, skip some steps.
Sure. And
you try to really get people to do things before they really see the benefit of it.
Well, we had somebody on the podcast yesterday, and they used the idea of the demonstration. Demonstrate.
Well, and this kind of ties into one of the big efforts that we have. We have something in Texas called the Texas Connections Consortium. And this is, it's really an Ellucian partnership. And the vision of this came back in 1994, and it's 40-plus public institutions in Texas that all run Banner.
Wow.
And what the vision was is that when it was probably more of a problem at the time, and they were trying to solve this, was the legislature would pass all these kinds of laws that would then have to, every institution would have to interpret the law, and then they'd have to figure out a way to make Banner, it was even the predecessor to Banner, make it compliant. And so it was very inefficient because every institution was doing this. So somebody said in 1994, why don't we come together and let's share some resources and do this in a common way, And that's been going on since then. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. We have a conference coming up. But it lays into this very thing that you're talking about, change, because all the discussion about going to Banner SaaS and how do we do that. And I was just in a conversation earlier with some of the Ellucian folks, and we were talking about how this is for Texas, and I think it applies for everybody.
Yeah.
It's how we need to spend some time getting people to see the benefit instead of just saying, go to Banner SaaS.
Right.
And so we were talking about what strategies can we use with our model to make that work. I'm the chair of the board for that group, so that's why I get to be a little more involved than some of the other folks. So,
well, I think that's exactly right. So, congrats to whoever in 1994 had that genius idea of let's get together and actually talk and figure this out collectively first. And then to all of you who are coming together right now, thinking through that component of let's just not say we need to do it. Let's figure out how do we show people the value of this and then move them forward. So let's stay with that. How are you anticipating doing that? What are some of the strategies you're anticipating?
So sometimes the way we're structured as a state with TCC is there's different players that we've got as part of our governance process. We have what we call we've got the board, which is made up of the CIO, CFOs, and then also enrollment management, because those are kind of the different tentacles that go into each one of them. And also have some of the technical group that's part of a leadership council. Then we have the subject matter experts like the registrars and the folks. They have some way to do it. So we have ways to reach them, and then we leverage things like the conference. Last year we had a whole series of sessions that were just on Banner SaaS and talking through, even if you're not going to work on this in the next year, here's 5 things you could be doing to prepare for that, or the next 2 or 3 years.
Smart.
Breaking it down for them, because I know people are busy, and then they can also, fear can kind of lead you down a path that you don't necessarily need to
That
go
is
down.
very true. That is very true. Well, I imagine a key component of the consortium is really sharing that kind of information back and forth. This is what's been working for us over here. This is what you might be thinking about. Because I'm sure with 40 institutions, you're all at different stages in readiness.
Absolutely. And it, like the first one that actually went live in Texas is Laredo College.
Yep, I know Laredo.
And they, I really appreciate them blazing the trail for a lot of us, but they can help set the tone. And then there's some folks right after that are already in line. Wharton County is another one that's actually going that way. And they all have different drivers for why they need to go at this moment. But I think there's been a little bit of a misnomer over the last couple of years where some people think, well, I don't really need to think about that till I'm going to it. Mm-hmm. And as the team from Ellucian is trying to help us break that apart with how do we dispel the myths and then really have some tangible steps that move us forward.
I think that's exactly right, because it's really the more preparation and preparatory work you can do in advance to get people ready and understand your readiness and where your gaps are and your challenges might be, the easier that actual implementation and conversion process is going to be.
And so many of the key players, one level is you want to get the IT folks bought in, but you really need to get the rest of the campus understanding the why. So that they really buy into it.
What strategies do you use on that front? Are you doing some demonstrations, some workshops, some convenings? Do you do listening sessions? I think that'll be helpful for folks to hear.
That's part of the conversation we had this morning, and we were talking about how just here you had some of the presidents, and that's a nice way to really tap in and make sure that you're getting buy-in at that level. You don't always have that as an opportunity, but there's different ways I think we can engage those functional areas across different elements. And I think the nice part is, you said it earlier, a lot of the collaboration generates the ideas on how could we get this message out. Right. And I think we're in the fairly early stages on how to get a little more organized on how we could do that as a state, because it really serves us better, especially when we get into this, as more and more of the schools will move, we're building it into a SaaS environment, which is a lot more efficient than the way we've done it, where it's 40 different versions of TCC.
Yep.
Well,
I think nothing but possibilities looking forward for the coalition, for sure. Let's talk about Angelo State a little bit, and where are you in your modernization journey there, and maybe what some of the challenges have been that you've encountered and how you've solved them.
I think we're like everybody else. We're trying to use, AI's being discussed, and at first you you kind of go through this cycle of fear from certain folks.
Certainly.
Worried about it, but then you have to kind of frame it, in my opinion. You have to frame it in a way that says AI didn't just pop up all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
It's been evolving for quite some time. We've just went to another level when we talk about what's out there now. And I know I was having a conversation with some folks internally, not on the IT side, but we were doing this a while back, and they were just real nervous about it. It's part of the legal team that we were talking through it.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to talking about things that we take for granted now that in the past, I mean, it's amazing how it's evolved. Now, I was using the example of just when you pull up your phone and you want to go from A to B, you pick a destination. It'll tell you if the traffic's too much, and nobody really wants to go back to the Rand McNally book that you opened up to figure out where you are,
or the little paper foldable maps that get stuck in the glove box. Remember those?
Yeah, and I think about that and go, we're not scared of that.
Right.
We would never give it back.
Right.
And so, it's going to be, it was interesting to hear some of the keynotes and all the stats on new jobs, and this is going to change. It's big disruptors in certain ways. And that may be true.
Yep. I think you're right. I think part of the issue with AI right now is just the intensity, the feeling that it's brand new.
Yep.
And it's being thrown on you, but it isn't really that new. It's been evolving, as you said, for a long time. And I think part of mitigating that fear is helping people understand that.
Right. And for us, we've really kind of went down a path like with Copilot for us.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've learned this, I relearned this lesson a lot, where I try to find what's that magic thing that's really going to help somebody see the benefit of it. And it usually, somebody told me this once, quit looking for zebras. When you see hoof prints, don't look for zebras, look for horses. And I think I've seen that too many times.
I like that.
Where I go too deep. We go too deep and you find out, so we're trying to have some workshops on Copilot, and then you'll see somebody go, oh, wow, my minutes are done out of a meeting. It transcribed and summarized the whole meeting that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And on one level you go, well, it's just minutes. It's just a summary of the meeting, but it's a time saver. And that really talks about efficiency.
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier to Elvin and to others. I think if there was a theme from all the conversations we've been having up to this point, it's that efficiency, that time saving, that task management aspect of all these different technologies. So AI is kind of at the core of so many different things that are being developed and rolled out, and you're seeing a lot of those on display here.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the messaging on campus is, wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to spend quite as much time on those things and you could devote more of that time to what really matters? However you define that, it's going to be different, probably department by department.
And it's back to the people process. If you'll create a forum where they can learn enough, and because I don't have all the answers for it.
Right.
And so when you have those conversations, then they build enough confidence. Some of them will jump right in. Other ones you got to help lead a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to kind of be anticipating how to create an environment for them to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Have you all gone so far as to create real policies? Because this is another aspect of the AI conversation, which is, how do we do policy? Is policy rigid? Is it flexible? Is it more guardrails? Is it more prescriptive? So I'm just curious.
We are in the process of looking at, we've got some drafts, but we're also trying to make sure we're part of the Texas Tech University system.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making sure we're trying to align with what our peers are doing as we go through that. And I have a feeling it's going to evolve. I mean, like anything, it's going to start out, whatever you decide, if you come in and it's more guardrails or it's more ultra flexible, you're going to tune that over time as we learn more. And I know when we were really looking at this, we leveraged Gartner for a lot of advice. And, they were, at the time, they said, be careful not to just jump into policy,
right?
Because you're going to get ahead of it before you're really ready. You're going to put all these things in place and then find out it really doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly right.
It's just taking a little time to kind of see how that all plays out, but be careful how you approach it.
I think that's right. I've had conversations with folks and I've said, give yourself some grace. Right?
Yes.
We're figuring it out right now. It's going to evolve. So trying to anticipate or put something in stone when it's going to change in a year, 2 years, not to mention 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Let's not even go that far.
Right.
And I think that messaging sometimes resonates, but it depends on who you talk to and where they are in their overall sensibility towards the AI technology. I
think you need to keep your eye on the ball and just be ready to adjust as time goes along. So it's not like just sit back, do nothing. I think that end of the spectrum is not good. And the other side is having all the answers is not realistic.
Right.
So you're trying to. We're learning from each other. We go look at what other schools are doing, and then try to see what fits for us for right now, and then we'll adjust as we go along.
Well, in the state of Texas, as in other large states, you do have some really big flagship campuses that have a lot of resources and no doubt a lot of capacity to devote to thinking through these issues. So maybe just let's drill into that a little bit. To what extent can you find, whether it's inspiration or frameworks from institutions of that size within your own state, and then leverage some aspect of that to an institution like Angelo State?
I think just there's a very collaborative nature across the state. So there are a lot of times, whatever the topic may be, and AI would be just another one where you can reach out and you make a lot of those connections. And I know, as I say about like Texas Connections Consortium, that is one of the big benefits about it, is that people do come together, and then eventually it kind of creates those relationships between the schools that you feel comfortable picking up. There's other ways of doing that, like there's different consortiums across the state that really still tie in the leadership layer so that you can share ideas like that. And I've never, that's one of the things I love about higher ed, is in one way we're a competitor with each other, but we're very open to sharing a lot of things with each other. And I think that's always interesting.
I found that to be the case for the most part. Yeah. Every once in a while you'll run into little pockets where there's a sense of competition or be careful. But I do think in the world we're in, that's eroding more than it's growing in some ways.
I know that is a challenge because of, hey, we got to get those students, and you're the enemy to me. But at the same time, you're very collegial about it most of the time too. So
I'm curious, Brian, relative to maybe the consortium, how much emphasis or value do you think is being placed on the security aspect of, say, going to SaaS in conversation? I mean, that can be a real selling point. It can be a real motivating factor in these conversations. So I'm just curious, as of today, where you feel like the security component of all this.
I think that probably varies per school. Mm-hmm. I mean, security is always important, and it's definitely grown just across the state. I mean, I'll tell you a little story. Back in 2000, in the state of Texas, is maybe around 2001, and the state passed that you had to have somebody designated as a security officer. And I remember talking to one of the young men then, who's still there. He's actually our security officer, and we joke about this now. We looked at each other, and we were talking about, well, how can we keep that person busy if we actually do this? That was 2001.
Yeah.
And we joke about it now, going, we never have enough to do all these things. So kind of your question on SaaS, I think there's different layers of security. And example, if somebody says, I don't really have a good disaster recovery plan, right, that's going to be a big driver for them to be able to say, I get to an environment that I feel more comfortable with. And others, it may not be that may not be as big a driver. Right. And I think you can go through different examples as you look at it. I know security is going to be it's always a big driver on making sure you're in a secure environment. And SaaS does take away some of the variables that we have had to deal with for on-prem. Still got to be secure, but it kind of shifts the risk a little bit more to the vendors to have to make sure they have good processes in place for that.
When you look back on 25 years.
25 at ASU, yes.
Yeah, 25 years doing the work that you're doing, you probably have a lot of lessons learned and things you could share. Because with newer CIOs, folks coming into that role in the environment we're in, what would be some advice you might give those folks?
I think for us, my our CIO, Doug Fox, I'll do a shout out to him. When he first started, he's been there a little bit before me, and he came in and he really talked to the team at that time and said, you are customer service first, your technicians second, which really implies that we're in the relationship business.
100%.
And I don't know if everybody always, it's one thing to say you're customer focused, but I don't know if people always live that. And I've said it for years that if you're really customer focused, it can be inconvenient for you, the deliverer, because you're doing what you want to get done for the day.
Right.
But you have to be able to adapt real quickly and assess and decide, you know what, I'm going to drop that right now and pick that up because of 10 different reasons. I've had people ask me because, it's something we've tried to hone over the last 25 years is just being very customer centric, and relationships are the most important part for us, and that everything else will fall into its place over time.
Yeah.
And
well, go ahead.
No, so it's I'd say that to me, if you'll do that, the other pieces become they really support. You can die. If you don't do that piece, you can't even be at the table.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and I think it's inspiring and important that you mentioned the relationship piece. I'm happy to say I've heard that from a lot of folks who are in your role, who are seeing themselves as that relational person first, transactional or the technical person second. And I think that's a good message to push out there in the age that we're in, when you're hearing more and more that future of higher ed leadership might be folks who are coming from the CIO, CTO side of the house.
Well, and one of the things that we tried to do, and this was Doug's vision when we first started, and I think it was supported at the president's level, tying the IT group more to the mission of the institution.
Yes. And
one way we've done that is we invest in students. We have quite a few student workers, but we bring them in to try to bring them to get an experience as a professional, as an IT professional, and we'll get them from different majors, and they become part of our support team, and then we work them into different areas within the group. But it's kind of symbiotic. We give them good experience, but then they also keep us very tied to the mission, and we know retention's higher by us getting those groups together.
No doubt.
And I think there's also this fear. Sometimes we'll talk to some peers that you see a lot of good examples where people invest in students that way. But I've also heard some of them say, oh, I can't do that because, one, they're not graduated. You don't know what magically occurs when you walk across the stage. Right. And then you're a little worried that you give them too much responsibility. But I think if you manage it, it can really give some fruits to that whole experience. And they become part of, they really become part of your team. And it creates some good opportunities to connect to the rest of the campus.
What an organic way to add value to the degree or the program that they're in, to the experience of being a student at Angelo State University. I think that's a great potential strategy and idea for others out there who might go, oh, well, we're not doing that right now, but maybe there's a way that we can do that here and then create some more value for those folks. Yeah,
very good.
Well, Brian, as we think about sort of rounding out our time together here, first of all, it's been great to listen and learn from you and hear what's going on down at Angelo State University, but also with the consortium. We're sort of, I guess some people call it day 2. I call it really day 1 of all the content here at eLive. So what else are you looking forward to? What's got you excited about the next couple of days?
Definitely. I'm going to be looking a little bit more at the SaaS, Banner SaaS, obviously, because it's just making sure that we're kind of staying in that whole process is going to be organic and moving, and making sure we're kind of aligning with that. And I've got to stay with the hype on the AI stuff to go see what else is going on, just to make sure we're structuring the right way and what's coming down the pike. So looking forward to some of the keynotes that I'm seeing. We got Dion and then the gentleman tomorrow. Yep. So I think that's going to be good. I really enjoyed the one today. I thought that was really good.
I thought it was good too. It was a lot of emphasis on speed and service and doing a better job aligning to what students really want and need, and kind of getting out of our own way.
I love hearing when somebody says students are customers.
Yes.
I remember the first time I brought that up, and it was brought up by other folks, but it was just not the same mindset 25 years ago. Not everybody, but you definitely had a little bit harder time with that. But I like the customers, or the student-centric. They are customers.
They are. And they're looking for the experience that they get out in the world and in their other interactions.
And whatever you think drives them, I mean, you think the parents drive it. I don't think the parents drive where they want to go and all that good stuff. It just doesn't work that way.
It didn't drive me. It didn't have anything to do with what my parents thought.
I have 3 kids that all went, and what they were weighing was very different than what I was weighing.
No doubt. Well, Brian, it's been great to have you with us. Any final parting words of wisdom for folks out there?
Wisdom. Ooh.
Insight, inspiration, anything you want to leave people with.
I'd say, I know this is kind of cliche, but just you have to know that just be comfortable with things changing. And I don't know if sometimes you feel like you can get a little fatigued on it, but if you keep the right mindset and know, it's pretty exciting. And I think with us, like having some of the students there, they do keep me young because you hear what their expectations are. And 4 years is a big difference. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. We're in that word lifelong learner, you really are there, and change is just part of the recipe for what we're going to be doing.
Well said. Well said, sir. Brian, thanks for jumping on the podcast with us. Really appreciate having you here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And with that, you've just ed upped.